Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Health and Fitness Show on Inspire FM. I am Dr. Amna and welcome to this evening's show. So this is a pre-recorded show for Thursday the 2nd of March 2023, and for the next hour we'll be focusing on your health and fitness. We'll be broadcasting on 105.1 FM in Luton, but you can also listen back to the show on the Inspire FM YouTube and Instagram page, where we'll have links of everywhere else that you can listen to the show, and we'll be putting some important links in there for you to follow if you like as well. So I'm Dr. Amna, I'm a GP living and working here in Luton, and as we know, we are coming up already to another year of fasting and Ramadan. So this is the time that we need to start thinking about fasting, and not just for the month, but maybe how to make some changes in our daily lives to take on board all the benefits that intermittent fasting brings. So I am very privileged and honoured today to have one of my colleagues with me, Dr Kunal Kothari, who is a GP partner at Bute House Medical Centre here in Luton. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you Amna for inviting me, and really congratulations for you to run this show around health and fitness. It's the need of the day, and you're we have listened to your shows before and really looking forward to have a conversation with you. You're doing great work with this show.
Oh, thank you so much. As always, we obviously today, because we're pre-recording the show, as you can see in our new podcast studio, please do give us any feedback. If there's anything that you want us to talk about in future shows, we will be talking a lot more over the next couple of weeks about Ramadan, preparing for Ramadan, specific health conditions in Ramadan, and we'll be touching on some of those today. So if you have any questions, please pop them either on the Facebook link or the Instagram. So that's either on the Inspire FM Instagram handle or my one at Dr. Amna GP, and we will answer them in future shows, or we can forward them along to Dr. Kothari. So let's get started. Now, I really wanted you to do this show, and I've been wanting you to come on the show for many, many months, because you are somebody who lives by what you teach. You know, sometimes we talk about, I say, oh, this is what I tell my patients, but sometimes it's really difficult for me to follow it myself. But you don't. You actually follow a lot of this kind of proper, healthy, clean living in your daily life. So why don't you start off by telling us about that?
Yeah, no, I think it's just one of those things that I myself have, struggled with the weight all the time and gone through various diet programs, etc. And what I realize is that people always want to be healthy. If you ask a person, no matter what kind of background they are in, they always want to feel healthy. It's just that the information is always patchy. And it's very difficult, even as a medics, for us to understand that actually what sort of combination works best. And in a way, is just going through those sort of trial and error. We have kind of worked out something which has worked for our patients, which has worked for myself and my friends and family. And that's what really I just kind of trying to now give it back to people, that this is one way of doing it. This is not the only way, but this is definitely one way of having that sort of healthy and happy life. That's what we want to achieve, really.
Yeah. And that's a specific program that runs across your PCN, so your group of practices called Smart Life that you've set up, and you post videos as well in different languages as well online. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
So yeah, I mean, this was all started with the pandemic, with the lockdown and everything. So just had a small YouTube channel, just telling friends and family in the kind of finding that gap that in the Gujarati language and in the Hindi, etc., just to give some information with the videos. And then we started kind of launching it for our own patients. So with the few rounds of it, and with the seeing the success in the patients and positive feedback, we have just kind of last year started now with the whole PCN. So we are from Hatter's Health Network, which is group of 6 GP surgeries.
Oh wow! I thought it was only 3. So I'm glad you're here to correct me.
6 GP surgery. It's a Bute House Medical Centre, Sundan Medical Centre, Oakley Surgery, Legrave Surgery, Dr. Mirza and Partners, and Lister House. So these are the 6 practices. And
so this is specifically if you are part of any of these surgeries, listen up. And if you want to be involved in this initiative, please contact your surgery and say you've heard about the Smart Life that Dr. Kothari is running, and get involved. But hopefully this is something that will be spreading to other surgeries as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is that sort of SMART initiative for weight loss. And basically the program, the SMART, is the sort of a acronym for S is for sleep, M for mindfulness,
Yeah.
A for activity, R for real food, and T is for time restricted eating, which you
Okay.
wanted me to talk today,
Yeah.
which is what we are going to concentrate later on.
Yeah.
But so it's a 5 component, and what we have looked at it, that is just one pillar doesn't work, and in a way only combination of that is really gives that sort of right result.
Yeah.
So what we have done is it's over the 7 days where we run this thing. It's on over the Zoom
Okay.
evenings time, so 6:30 to 8 o'clock on alternate Tuesdays. In fact, we are starting a new batch of the SMART initiative from the introductory day is the following Tuesday.
Okay.
I know now this is going to be broadcast later on, but
But you can still join if you hear it. If you hear about
absolutely.
it. Yes.
So it's and the plan is that we are running it sort of 3 cohort a year. So anybody who is a bit overweight, there is a BMI cutoff for 27. If people don't know BMI, that's just the kind of a, looking at your weight and height ratio. But if you ask your practice, they can easily tell you, and there are a lot of online calculator. If you put your height and weight onto that online calculator, it will tell you a BMI. So anybody with BMI about 27, these things are suitable. And we are just running it through the Zoom sessions. And as I said, we have just finished 1 round with a very good response.
Excellent.
And looking forward to start the next cohort.
Amazing. So it's all of those different pillars, and I think that's really important. And all of those things, when we think about Ramadan specifically, all of those things get affected because it's your sleep. People are constantly asking, how do I exercise while I'm fasting or while I'm changing my diet, and should I change one thing and then the other? And inevitably, if you start doing something like exercise, you find that your diet needs to be different because either you can't keep up with it because of the amount of energy that you're taking in isn't quite right, or so I think it completely makes sense what you're saying, that we need to focus on all of those things. So we're going to be focusing a lot more on kind of the food aspect today and intermittent fasting and the types of food. But can you maybe give us just one kind of snapshot for each of the letters? So sleep.
So yeah, sleep meaning obviously recommended part is 7 to 9 hours sleep in general for everybody, and there is a whole thing in terms of the sleep is not just we think that we are just resting sort of thing, but actually it's a almost repair of the brain and body. And a lot of memory etc. problem are linked to people who are not sleeping well. So sleep is absolutely important in that sense, and there are a lot of tips in terms of your caffeine use to nowadays the way you use social media before going to the bed etc. Those light etc. is a problem, and we talk about those interventions when we talk about sleep.
Yeah, and that's all kind of under sleep hygiene, isn't it? So
absolutely,
it's the whole process of, it's not just when you are asleep, it's everything that kind of comes around it and everything that you're doing in your day, which again is something that I find, because I really struggle with my sleep, and we've talked on a previous show about kind of good sleep hygiene and building good habits, and I feel like after a couple of weeks that completely goes out of the window, which I think it does for most people. But my focus is always, okay, well, we're coming up to fasting. I know I'm going to have to wake up at different times. I know I'm going to have to get maybe through the day on not necessarily less sleep, but different sleep. And what are the things to do with that? So I think the thing that kind of struck a chord with what you just said is about social media. So it's that constant flicking and constantly keeping your brain awake. I was disturbed by my cat in the middle of the night yesterday, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I picked up my phone, and I was literally so asleep, and it was so dark, and I was still kind of like scrolling through, and it just kind of woke my brain up. And okay, so that's the...
And the next two is mindfulness and activity. Actually just comes from what you just now said. So we were supposed to keep our mind still and in balance, and we used to move our body. What's happening now is, with this sort of age of everything at our fingertips, our mind wanders all over the place, whereas the body is still, and exactly that's what we need to change. That how do you be mindful, which is living in the present state, enjoying the present moment, finding happiness in day-to-day, connecting back to the nature, and finding solace in whatever you believe in, whether it's a religion or whether it's spiritual aspect of it, or whether it's just inner self-reflecting part of it, which is being grateful for the day, having that positive mindset, visualization. So that sort of talk are under the mindfulness part of it.
And building that kind of, any kind of routine, like you say, whether that's praying, for example. So, if I tend to think, I'm already doing that because I'm praying 5 times a day, tick. Well, but actually, am I? If I'm kind of in between, just kind of fitting in praying and just going back to sitting at my desk and doing work, actually that goes against what you've just said. It's taking a few minutes to kind of contemplate a little bit more, think around it, think about all the things that kind of you're doing and being grateful. So what's one thing you're grateful for today, Kunal?
Well, I'm grateful that I managed to come to speak with you today, and hopefully this message across, which will pass through many more people through your medium and through Inspire FM, doing this wonderful initiative. So I'm grateful for that, but let's see what your audience say.
Well, thank you. I for one, and I'm sure everyone listening as well, will also be very grateful for your time and that you're here delivering this message and giving up your time. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to activity. I know you've kind of touched on it already, and keeping us active.
So the 2 points of activity. One is about just the step count and walking. The walking is what has made us human. The difference between that sort of, our brain development became when our both hands become free. So when we were in that sort of a kind of walking on all fours, when probably looking at our ancestors with the chimpanzee and gorilla and that whatnot, if you look at it, the development of what makes us human is actually walking on 2 feet. So walking is much more than exercise, and again is that sort of mind-body coordination. Amount of things happens just to make us walk, and you can just see the toddler who is trying to keeps on falling off and trying to walk. So there is a whole system which is connected to that. But in the simple one line, if I want to say the step count, that sort of, they say anything less than 6,000 step count a day is a really sedentary lifestyle. 8,000 is your really goal and good if you can reach that, and anything above 8,000 is just then very good and kind of sign of you being very active. But on top of that, you also need some exercise which is a strength training.
Definitely.
And that is the kind of, we always have thought that weightlifting is only for bodybuilders, but actually it's important for everyone, and so important for women over 40 years of age, because the way hormone changes, you start losing muscle, and there is like almost prediction that you lose 1% of muscle mass every year you live beyond 40. So actually some degree of weight training and resistance training, whether that's body weight or the actual weight, HIIT, any of those things is absolutely essential. And those are the things which keeps your metabolic rate high. Without that, if you do any diet program, etc., it's just not going to work.
Right. Wow. And I think I can just picture, as you're talking, the people that will kind of be clapping along to everything that you're saying, because we've done some shows before on this show about strength training, about weight training, and keeping yourself active in different ways. And it's not just, I know we've also done shows on running and walking, but it's not just about that. It's about doing different forms of exercise. And I know for me, I'd gotten into such a good habit of kind of doing weight training, and I really would encourage, if you still haven't tried it yet, please do. There are lots of different gyms that you can try now in Luton, women's only spaces if that's the kind of thing that you need or want, but also just YouTube things at home. And I found that I've not been very well the last couple of weeks, and I've had to stop completely doing all of that. And firstly, I've really missed it, but also I've really felt that very quickly my body has become a lot weaker, and actually doing things like walking up the stairs and going for a little jog has been really hard on my body, and actually that just makes me think that's how I felt a couple of years ago before I started doing all of these things. And it's surprising how quickly your body can decondition, which means kind of just stop and get, I don't know, like forget how strong it can be, and therefore, needing to just get back into it in just any tiny little way.
Absolutely. And they typically say that when you lift weight, your brain develops before your biceps. So there is a lot of positive hormones which you release, BDNF, to the whole, that sort of positive effect you get from there is actually amazing. That's why people need to think of muscles as a much more than just sort of something for bodybuilder to show off.
No,
those are your
not.
energy factory. Those are things which is metabolized thing. That is what makes your metabolic rate, which is how well or how efficient your system is in terms of digesting the food or energy you consume. That all depends on your muscle mass.
Excellent. And because we're coming up to Ramadan, for those who are listening to this and are very inspired, excellent, please let us know. But they're thinking, oh, well, there's no point in starting now, or I'll start doing all of these things, but I don't know how I can continue it when I'm fasting. Should we talk a little bit first about fasting, or should we talk a little bit about what we can do? Just little things to start.
I think we can go into the fasting first, and then obviously we can do that, or because that on its own is a full thing, how you start.
I think all of these things, to be honest, I really want to come to.
But I run this almost 1.5 hour each session of this thing. Is I speak about 1.5 hour on those things, so very difficult to put it compactly there. But it's important, and it just, as you rightly said, it's just about using body weight. It's about you don't have to, if you can have dumbbells or kettlebell or something, that's brilliant. If you don't, if you have gym membership, even better. But if you don't have it, there is a lots of you can just put the YouTube search on how to use own body weight for strength training, and there are lots and lots of video available which you can then look at your level and start something from there.
Or things like yoga and Pilates that again you can do at home.
Absolutely.
I know, and I've talked about this before, doing the marathon, I didn't do as much running training, but what I realized I was doing for kind of a year or so before is a lot of Pilates, a lot of yoga, and kind of inner core strength training.
Absolutely.
Which kind of really helped, and I found that my recovery compared to maybe some of the other people I ran with who had done a lot more runs but not that strength training was a lot faster.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So we're on, we've done SMA, R.
Is for real food.
Real food. This is the bit I want to get to. Real food. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what constitutes real food, because my diet is still in need of a lot of improvement, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners will feel that. So
I think there's a two part. If simplest thing is real food is that where you can see the food and you can recognize what is in there, or what your probably grandparents would consider the food. And that's the kind of simple definition. So the reverse of that is what is the fake food or what is the processed food. And that's where the companies and factories and refinery comes into play. And there is
things
a word
with brightly colored labels.
Absolutely. So the real food actually is usually comes without packaging, and usually you don't need to put the energy labels into that. Whereas the fake food or processed food is the one which you will get from the supermarket aisles, and those comes in the boxes with a long shelf life. But only way you can make the shelf life longer is by putting a lot of preservatives, chemicals. And actually, when we say it's refined food, is basically, so in terms of the flour, it will be the white flour, which is very kind of unprocessed. So you've taken out every bit of protein and fiber out of it.
All the good things.
And then what you remain is the white flour, which is most of those recipes are based around there. Second thing, that will have a lot of sugar. And the way they do the combination of sugar and salt is such a way that there are kind of scientists that are sitting there looking at our brain response. And the problem with the way they made this food is that you can never feel satiety doesn't come with that.
You constantly want more.
So the packet of crisp, you can never put halfway. You're always going to finish the packet of crisp. You can never have just one cookie. You always want more. And because there is a whole science gone behind it for you to feel like that. Is just creating that right code of response. So, and then the third thing item in there is those things which is the oil, and which is all the again the seeds, oils, etc. And again, more oil you reuse, which is typical happens in most of the fast foods. It's decrease the quality of it, and it just makes it unhealthy. The problem with those foods is that it's empty calorie. So there is no, our requirement is protein, healthy fat, and lot of different color vegetables, etc. Now, what you get from there is just empty calories, so you never feel full. Because till you don't have the right amount of protein in the diet, you are going to feel hungry. And that's where the problem starts. And in a way, you need to get out of that cycle of breaking out of that ultra-processed food and eating the real food, which is typically, there are usually not more than 5 ingredients. But if you cook something home, that's not a problem. If you put a lot of spices in there, etc., that's still a real food. But the real food is that sort of thing, which is, as I said, probably easiest thing is your grandparents would recognize as a food.
I think the things that don't require packaging, the things that this is an apple or this is an orange, rather than you give somebody something and they have to ask you, what is it or what's in it, or if you have allergies and things, you're constantly checking and reading. Oh, that's a really good way of
so if you just take a fruit like an orange. If you eat an orange, you have to peel an orange. You will get some fiber with that. You will get a lot of water with that, and you get some orange juice. Whereas same orange juice, when you have it from a carton, that orange juice have no fiber now. There is invariably some degree of preservative to keep it in a fresh state, and that becomes pretty much pure glucose and sugar. So while the orange is healthy and natural, orange juice is a processed food, and it's not going to do the right thing for you apart from just shooting up your sugar.
And actually, that's a good thing, coming up to Ramadan, if you're thinking about fasting and you have things like diabetes, or you have somebody in your house maybe with the means of testing your blood sugars, this is the time pre-Ramadan now to start looking at what things are you eating and their effect on your blood sugars. So I know we've read before about kind of bananas, and I always ask patients, when I ask them about fruit and veg, do you eat much? And they say yes. So what's your favorite fruit? And inevitably, I think I asked this maybe about 100 times, and only one person said a random fruit. Everyone else said bananas. Most people tend to love bananas, and bananas has such a huge amount of sugar that kind of spikes up your sugar. And it's not about saying don't ever have a banana again. It's maybe just be aware that you don't have 2 or 3 bananas. It's having a mixed kind of varied diet and thinking about yourself as a whole. Wow, so we're actually coming up to the end of the first half of our show, and we've not even got to the intermittent fasting part of it, but I think that's been so useful as a kind of a background grounding of why this is so important and all the things that we should start thinking about. Not just for Ramadan, some of us won't be able to fast. I think Ramadan just gives us an opportunity to kind of reflect, take some time out from kind of life, do things a bit differently. And how long does it take to build a habit?
Typically this is 3 weeks, and then it becomes your second nature.
Exactly. So actually, if we are going into Ramadan, we've lost the cameras, I think. Never mind. If we go into Ramadan with that intention of we are going to build these good habits and take them forward, then I think that's that's an amazing thing to do, and hopefully, inshallah, after the 3 weeks, we will have all of those healthy habits that we can take on board at the end of the month, inshallah. Okay, so after the break, we will come back and we will specifically then focus on intermittent fasting and more about the health benefits and comparing it to kind of true fasting, but also talking about who shouldn't fast or who should take this opportunity 1 month before Ramadan to speak to their GP about some health advice. So we'll see you in a few minutes, inshallah.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show on Inspire FM. And today we've been talking about intermittent fasting, but also just general healthy habits and how to be healthy ahead of Ramadan, and also just maybe even just using that as an excuse to start being healthy in our overall lives. We are broadcasting on 105.1 FM. But you can also listen back to the show on the Inspire FM Facebook page and Instagram page on both their hashtag at Inspire FM Luton and my one at Dr Amna GP. Now, I've been very, very excited to have Dr Kunal Kothari, who's been with us on the show today in our brand new podcast studio, one of the first guests on our in our podcast studio, telling us all about his Smart Life program that happens across different GP surgeries in Luton. If you can just remind us which surgeries those are. So if you're listening and you want to be involved, please contact your GP surgeries.
So it's part of Hatter's Health Network, which is Bute House Medical Centre, Sundon Medical Centre, Oakley Surgery, Leagrave Surgery, Dr. Mirza and Partners, and Lister House Surgery. Excellent. Those are the 6 surgeries.
Perfect. And hopefully, inshallah, that pilot will continue in different surgeries across Luton soon. But we wanted to focus now on this second half of the show, specifically on intermittent fasting and its benefits. But first, I'll welcome you back, Dr. Kothari. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Amna. And so intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting. What is it? Because we hear it all the time. I think you said right at the beginning, the difficulty is at the moment is that there's so much patchy information from everywhere, from social media. Everyone's an expert. Everyone has an opinion on everything. So medical opinion from somebody who actually knows and who's actually studied this. What is intermittent fasting?
Well, I think what it is fasting is, we all know is the most natural thing. If you look at ancient time, the human population has always, the food was never this abundance.
Yes.
This only a recent thing that you can just wake up and open the fridge and find a breakfast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're go back to hunter-gatherer life, either you have to kind of find some sort of edible fruits or you have to kind of hunt something to eat, etc. So you don't just wake up and you have a food available to you. So it was never a normal thing that actually you just wake up and keeps on eating till you kind of sleep. If you look at every religion in one form or another, and we are talking in context of Ramadan, but every religion across the world have some degree of fasting. They call it detoxification, sometimes they call it cleansing, and we'll look into that why they say that. But it's always been there, and it's only in a way science is catching up now with what human population knew all these years. And it's only now we are looking into it, into the science part of it. Now, before I go into the detail of what is intermittent fasting and advantage, etc., what I want to put one thing across is that because over next 20 minutes we are going to discuss the benefit out of it. But if you are somebody who is having eating disorder or just recovering from eating disorder, probably it's not the right thing for you. Same way for the pregnant ladies or somebody who is breastfeeding or children, because their growth requirements are different. They need different nutrient pool and these things are not suitable. And in terms of the medical condition, especially type 2 diabetes, if you are on insulin or if you have type 1 diabetes and insulin dependent, those people definitely need food in certain frequency and it's not something which they can do straight away. There are certain medication like gliclazide where also fasting doesn't work. So what I would suggest that if people who are on those things and if they really need to do it, this one or with the religious Ramadan fasting, they need to speak with the doctors rather than trying to do something themselves because it could be quite harmful. Yeah.
And we will be having different shows, as I said, over the next couple of weeks, specifically focusing on diabetes and other health conditions with fasting. But the advice, all of this advice that we give on the Health and Fitness Show is just kind of generic advice. It can't be personally tailored towards you. You do have to go and see your own GP to look at your own kind of medical risk assessment and what medications you're on to give you the correct advice.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so with the intermittent fasting, as I said, that is the most natural thing to do. And the reason, the advantage is, right now, if you look at the diet part of it, you will have people carnivore diet or vegan diet or vegetarian diet to keto diet to low carb diet to all sorts of diet programs are there, and there is always confusion. If you look at the media headline, there will be one day they will be saying coffee is good for health, other day they will tell you coffee is bad for you, eggs are good, eggs are bad. There is always controversy, always question, and even in the good product, how they're been kind of, the organic versus non-organic, and whole that is a different level. Whereas when you fast, it's something which you just don't have to do anything. So rather than making an initiative where you have to remember to kind of buy certain food, or to cut certain things, or you have to soak some certain things, you don't have to actually do anything. You can just remember to do it. So it's very simple. It's convenient. You can do it on holiday. You can do it in any weather. You can do it everywhere, and it's free. You save a lot of money, and you will save a lot of time, because actually, if you don't have to take all the meals you need, like if you can skip breakfast or you can skip dinner, then it's...
I know, I constantly think, sometimes, especially if I go on holiday and, I don't care if I stay in, a 1-star, bedroom at the back of someone's caravan, I need to have breakfast. When I'm on holiday, I'm like, I need to have a breakfast, package with it. And then I speak to people and they say, oh, every day I must have a full English breakfast. I'm like, how do you have the time? How do you have the time to do this? And actually, if you are able to kind of cut out those things that we don't need, you save so much more time. I have an extra half an hour in the morning.
Absolutely. And, the whole thing is about having that sort of, the breakfast. So you break your fast. But nobody said that has to be 8 in the morning. You break your fast when you feel you are ready to break the fast. And when you need to break the fast. So I think we just need to get that concept right in terms of the where it's working and how it goes. So I think going back to your question of what is intermittent fasting. So the first of all I would say is that every one of us do fasting every day. When we go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and you put something in your mouth, till that point every one of us and not many of us would wake up in the middle of the night to eat something, hopefully not. So we are all fasting every day. And all about, when we are talking about intermittent fasting, is whether we can just manipulate that window. And there was one research that actually a lot of people, an average number of population nowadays, have that sort of almost 15 to 16 hours of eating. That means if you start eating at 8 in the morning, you are pretty much eating till 11 o'clock till night. And we were never meant for that. As I was saying earlier part, that the food was never in that abundance. Because what happens is, when you keep on eating, you are basically releasing insulin every time you eat. And insulin hormone, which is the hormone, comes from a pancreas, which is a small gland where it works from it. And you might have heard of it in terms of the context of diabetes, but it's also a regulatory hormone. So what happens is, when you eat food, all the food becomes sugar, glucose, which goes in your blood. As soon as it goes in your blood, you release insulin hormone. Now, when you release insulin hormone's work is to get rid of those sugar from your blood and give it to your cells. When you reach a point where the cells don't need any more sugar, that's where that rest of the sugar get converted into the fat. That means when you eat, you are in a mode of fat storage with insulin hormone out. Now, what you need is, when you are not eating for a considerable period of time, that point your insulin hormone will not come out. That means you can start burning your fat. And that's the mechanism why it helps you lose the weight. So initial stage is anything, even just reducing that window to 12 hours, which is 8 in the morning. When you start eating, you finish by 8, is just a beginning. I don't think anybody, even with any medical condition, should eat more than 12 hours. In terms of start getting the benefit of intermittent fasting, you are looking at that eating window of 8 hours and fasting window of 16 hours. That's where you start getting typical benefit of the fasting, which we will discuss in a second, start coming in. And that is called time restricted eating. So you're eating in a window of 8 hours. That means if you start eating at 8 in the morning, your last meal is at by 4. Or you do other way around, where you skip breakfast. That means you start eating maybe at 12 in the afternoon and you can eat up to 8 in the night. And there is a flexibility in terms of you choose according to what works for you. And that's called time restricted eating.
Or what is mandated for you. Because I remember having this conversation last year and people were saying, oh my God, you're fasting for 16 hours a day. And how are you able to do that? But actually, a lot of people around me that were not Muslim are doing intermittent fasting and are fasting 16 hours a day. So actually, it's maybe now is the time, and the days are shorter this year than they were last year, alhamdulillah. But maybe this is the time to kind of try out what Kunal is saying, and just if you're already doing 8 hours, maybe 9 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, see what your body is able to do. And actually after a few days, as we find in Ramadan, yes, the first few days are hard because usually what we're doing is we're starting overnight, a change of 12 different things, including, if some of us go to the mosque and, do prolonged prayers and something completely different. But actually, there's no need to do that. And I think with any diet or any kind of healthy lifestyle change, it's making that small change gradually rather than overnight.
Absolutely. And you build up, you go to the gym, you start lifting up very small amount of weight and you build it up. Same way with the fasting window. If your current eating window is 14 hours, you might want to climb 12 hours, just delay your breakfast by 1 hour, bring your dinner up by 1 hour, and then you gradually build it up. And once you get that confidence that actually now you can do better, you do it. And even in the fasting window, so in context of the medical fasting, and I know in Ramadan it's almost dry fasting and you don't even drink water. Whereas in terms of the getting the advantage of the fasting medically, we don't even need to be that restrictive. So you are still allowed to drink water within your that sort of fasting window. You are allowed to have vegetable or bone broth. Because that gives you mineral with the water, but it doesn't release the insulin as such. You can have black tea or coffee, or your green tea and herbal tea. I know a lot of people are nowadays fan of that.
Which I didn't realize that green tea has caffeine.
It has.
So I only found that out a few days ago. Really not that long ago. Somebody was like, oh, but green tea. I was like, no, I did not know that.
Absolutely. But so those things are still allowed because our point in this fasting is that you don't want to release the insulin. So any clear water basically, which is not really to release the insulin, is allowed. And you can still have tea or coffee if you're absolutely desperate. You can have a small amount of the whole milk or a cream or butter in there because
People
that's not going to...
in their coffee? Wow.
Because that is not going to release the insulin. The whole game is about if we can stop releasing insulin, you start losing weight, as I said, because your body is either in the sort of a calorie storage form or fat burning mode, and that depends on whether insulin is out or in. And that's what it is. So you can have those things. Now, advantage, we talked about the weight loss. Look into the side of the diabetes. So diabetes, type 2 diabetes, when we are talking about here, which is more of an adult onset and usually associated with people who are overweight, etc. One of the main reasons you would have heard and might have already covered in your program is about insulin resistance. What insulin resistance is basically when you have a lot of insulin, a condition called hyperinsulinemia, which is a lot of insulin floating around in your body than what you need. Your cells start becoming resistant to it. It's almost like if you think that if you meet a friend once a fortnight or something, they welcome you. If you start knocking their door every day, they will say, no, thank you very much, we don't need you every day here. It's very similar that insulin hormone have a work with the cell to get the sugar in. But when you reach a level where insulin hormone is constantly high because you are constantly eating and you are also constantly eating high sugary food or processed food which release more insulin than normal, that means your relationship between cells and insulin becomes bad. The cells no longer listen to insulin to get the sugar in. That's resistance is what would cause now the sugar level to stay high in your blood, and that's why when we check the blood test, your GP or nurse will tell you that your blood is high and you got type 2 diabetes. So actually, if we can do this intermittent fasting, we reduce the amount of time insulin is out, the relationship get better between the cells and insulin, so you are reversing your insulin resistance. That means you are in the process of putting your diabetes into remission without even requiring many medications.
Amazing. And I think that's the thing that most of my patients want. They want to know, how can I not go on medications? Or if you're already on medications, how can I stop them? Or how can I reduce them? What things can I do to make things better? And I think these are all kind of very practical, fairly easy things to kind of just start thinking about and making small changes.
Absolutely. Other thing is in the brain power. We always think that we would so if you think of when you eat a very large meal, you always feel sleepy.
Yes.
Whereas when you are fasting, and again going back to hunter-gatherer life, if you are fasting, you need to be alert because you need to hunt something or you need to find the food.
Yes.
So actually, our body is not made in such a way that you are hungry and your brain stops working. In a way, you become more sharp and more focused.
Yeah.
So if you want to increase your mental strength, it helps. And there is a very well-known gut-brain pathway where, because we use a lot of energy to digest the food we eat, and again, the junk food you eat, there is a more work for your gut, and the gut is busy doing that. Your brain has to supervise all that thing. Whereas if your gut is empty, it will give a signal to brain that everything is under control here. You don't need to worry about us. The brain can look into other things and get you into that sort of positivity into life, and your brain is free to really focus on the area what you need to do in your life.
Wow, amazing. And I think I certainly see that in myself. If I'm fasting, I'm a lot more aware of my emotions even, and I'm aware of my relationship with food. And how it relates to my emotions as well. So I don't know, usually if I'm kind of at work or I'm busy or something happens, I have a snack, I have something in front of me and I'm literally just eating it because it's there, or I'll get up, I'll do a few more steps because it will say it on my watch. And there'll be some biscuits and I'll have a biscuit, and then I'll walk again and I'll have another biscuit. And I won't realize why I'm doing it or how I'm doing it or how much I've even kind of processed during the day. So I always tell people, I don't know if you use this, anyone who's kind of thinking about making a change, I say I use MyFitnessPal, the app, and I say download that, and for a week change nothing. Just the only change that you're going to make is that you put all the things that you're doing into that app, and that controls. It's a free app. You can download it on whatever phone you have. It has a place for you to put your water, your drinks, food. I think now there are options where it kind of breaks them down for you as well. Also exercise, if you're bothered to kind of type it in, and even just the process of doing that makes you control what you're doing. Because I know every time I was kind of walking past, a box of celebrations, I remember I was doing it. I was working on a ward around Christmas time, and there were constantly boxes of celebrations. And you would walk across and I'd pick up 2 or 3, and then I'd go sit on the computer, and then an hour later I'd walk again and I'd pick up another 2 or 3. But when I started using this app, I would put in every time I had one, I would put it in. And then when it came to like the 4th one, I'd be like, well, I don't want to put it in because I can see how much sugar it is. I can see actually that I don't particularly need it. And already your kind of body kind of changes that relationship that you have.
Absolutely. And again, so the evidence is coming around anti-aging and cancer risk reduction as well.
Yes.
Because abundance of nutrient, it's like, say if you are living in a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and if you're in one of the room, there is a broken chair, you don't bother with that. You leave it there because you have other rooms to use. Whereas if you're living in a studio apartment and where the space is not much, and if you have a broken chair, you probably will throw it because it's taking the space up. Same thing in our body. Those sort of aging cells are what makes us wrinkle, makes us kind of, age, also are the precursor of some of the cancers.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of nutrient, then actually you're going to see that the body will not try to resolve them. Whereas when you restrict your nutrient with the fasting, etc., that's why it's called cleansing and detoxification, because body will then see that, oh, I got limited supply of nutrient, who do I want to grow? So they will only choose the right cells and get rid of those sort of damaged cells, which helps with the anti-aging part of it. It kind of makes skin better, but also some of the cancer risk reduction is associated with that.
Wow. And you've talked about detoxing, and I want to kind of pick up on that word because a lot of people will say, oh, I've gone on a juice detox or a juice cleanse. And you've already mentioned that, having the actual fruit itself is much better than putting it all in a juice. But is there anything or any advice that maybe you can give to people who say, well, I'm too busy to have lots of fruit or to cut up lots of fruit, and it's just easier to put it in whichever form of blender you have?
I think what I would say is that because we are looking at not a dieting program but a lifestyle change, and in a way that's why it's not one diet advice which fits all. You know, some people will want to be vegetarian for a right reason, somebody want to prefer certain sort of meat, somebody even in the meat, somebody like seafood, somebody like different food, and it's no point of telling somebody that you are born and brought up with a kind of food that you can never have this in your life. All what we want to tell people is that is their normal food, but getting out of just junk and ultra processed food, and even minimize. Again, it's no point of telling people that you can never eat pizza in your life or you're not going to have ice cream in your life. But it's about 80-20 rule. If 80% of the time you eat healthy, the 20% of time you can have something unhealthy, knowing that it's a treat and for a special reason, but not having unhealthy thing, thinking it's healthy. And that's where I feel that when you put that sort of some sort of time restricted eating in your lifestyle, then you are actually not getting into any controversy of choosing right or wrong. But to do the fasting properly, you definitely need to eat healthy. You cannot eat junk and decide tomorrow to fast because, as I said, the right reason, because insulin is released. If insulin is out, insulin needs sugar, otherwise it makes you very hungry. So your hunger will only go down when you start eating healthy in your eating window. So doing some sort of fasting is not a license to eat whatever you like at other times. You still have to eat healthy. And as I said, healthy thing is the real food, which is the protein, healthy fats, and all the different color vegetables. You know, there's nowadays rainbow vegetables. Every color has something good in for you. So choose different color in the same way in the berries. All the different color berries are something good antioxidant. Same is true for different color vegetables. So if you choose different color vegetables, is something good in there for you.
Because we always say, look at your plate, don't we? And if it's all kind of white or beige or yellow where it's kind of rice and a curry, then that's not going to be very healthy for you.
Absolutely. And so we typically say that, you know, don't put a small amount of curry in a big amount of rice, but have a big amount of curry with put small amount of rice in there. So you're still having what food you like, but in a right quantity and right way. And especially trying to stop the spike of the sugar, which is by not having sugar as a raw thing, as a not having snacking thing. If you want to have something like sugar is thing, best time to have it is after dessert. So you had your healthy meal and then you have one item of whatever you need to have. But that will cause slow release because of the right amount of food with the right fiber and stuff you put in there, which will slow release, and insulin release much slowly, and you can control things much better.
It's just about regulating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Rather than, like you say, having these big spikes everywhere. Wow, that is a lot of information. That's very, very useful. A lot of information. What's kind of, if listening to all of this, everyone's saying this is all great, but I want one thing that I can start with tomorrow. What's that one thing?
I think start looking into your window really, into just if you can stop snacking, and you know you can still have your breakfast, lunch and dinner. And easiest way to do that is if you just decide that I will eat only when I'm sitting on the table.
Okay.
You know, because most of the snacking food is you're just walking into a room with your colleagues, there is a box of chocolate open, you just pick up a chocolate, you're not even hungry. I just walk outside of this room and there might be a cookies lying there and I just pick up one cookie. And if you just decide that actually, yes, I can have my breakfast, lunch and dinner, but nothing in between, you will actually start making those changes as a one step.
And we can do that, because I always say, I can't do that. And if there's something in front of me, like I constantly pick at it. And I tell myself that throughout the year. And then it comes to Ramadan, and where I'm, you know, I've made the intention that I'm going to be fasting and I'm not, and I don't pick it up. So actually I can have that self-control. I just maybe I'm choosing not to at different other points in the year. And maybe it's that kind of, if you do want to make a change, having that kind of just awareness about.
And it's just about knowing about your hunger, you know, because this is all about the hunger. Because hunger is not just that your stomach is empty and you're hungry. You smell the food, you feel hungry. There is a time to eat, you feel hungry. There is a social pressure, we feel hungry. And all those things.
Yes,
and you need to get out of all those things and get into the true hunger. Once you start recognizing true hunger, which is stopping processed food, eating healthy, in a smaller window, you start getting into that.
I think that is a wonderful place to end on. That summarises all the advice very, very, very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Kothari, for being with me today. I certainly have learnt so much. And inshallah, it's been useful to everyone who's been listening. Please do engage with us in the comments. We'll put some links of useful resources for you to have a look at. And if you have any questions, then do get back to us and we can answer those for you. But yes, just think of one little thing. Have a look at what you're already doing. And I think for me, that increasing that window, just even seeing what my window is first to then be able to do something about it is a thing that I'm going to start doing.
Absolutely. They say the Rome was not built in a year, but they were laying the brick every day.
Very true. That is amazing to end on. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening, and inshallah we'll see you again in next month. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.